But I'm here representing the corridor MPO, and then I'm going to give a background on the Highway 30 study, which the MPO kind of facilitated, and then Seth is going to talk about how it relates to the city and the city's comprehensive plan. So the background is that the city requested funding from the MPO for the development of the Highway 30 study, and the purpose of the study was to address concerns regarding requests for development and the availability and provision of services, particularly concerns related to transportation and sanitary sewer. So the study, this is a technical analysis, it's not a plan. It examines two different potential growth scenarios, and it looks at conceptual service improvements for transportation, water, sanitary sewer, and stormwater for each of those growth scenarios. It looks at the environmental impacts from development, and it also incorporates a fiscal impact analysis. As part of this study, the MPO coordinated a task force that included representatives of the City of Cedar Rapids, City of Ely, Lynn County, and the Iowa DOT. And throughout the development of the study, the task force provided input and guidance throughout the development. This slide here shows a map of the study area. So generally it's from about C Street on the west side to Highway 13 on the east. It follows generally the river to the north, and then the southern boundary is 76th Avenue. So majority of the area is unincorporated Lynn County. The area shaded in blue is the City of Cedar Rapids. As I mentioned, part of this study included developing two growth scenarios, and this was actually a really key component of this study, and we worked with city and county planning staff on developing those two growth scenarios. And then the consultants, we hired HR Green and their colleagues, SB Friedman, to do the conceptual infrastructure analysis and the fiscal impact analysis. So scenario one is planned growth. So this is growth that is consistent with adopted plans in both the City of Cedar Rapids and Lynn County. And based on the growth that is allowed by these plans, we're looking at around 10,483 units in the study area. Scenario two is the market-driven growth scenario, and this represents growth that aligns with recent development proposals that the city has received within the study area, and these generally exceed the densities that are allowed by the comprehensive plans. So we're looking at around 22,640 units within the study area. This map just kind of shows the difference between the two scenarios and a comparison of the dwelling units.
Hang on a minute, Ann, do you guys know where this is? Can you picture? So Kirkwood's down at the far left corner, and you can see the bend of the river. And MPO really looks at transportation ways. So we just had done this plan along Highway 100, and I think we've started to look at like where else are there potential growth areas and what kind of transportation and other kinds of fiscal capital improvements would be needed. So
Okay.
it's not a plan, it's just an analysis. We have had to say that. Everyone repeat after me. It's not a plan, it's just an analysis. So, I mean, you know, like what could happen.
So based on the two growth scenarios, the consultants took that and outlined conceptual infrastructure improvements for transportation, water service, sanitary sewer service, and stormwater management, and the associated costs of those, and all of those details are in the study. I'm not going to get into those details. What I really wanted to focus on are the key findings of this study, most of which pertain to the fiscal impact analysis portion. So what the study showed is that the revenue generated from development with either scenario does not cover the costs associated with providing city infrastructure and services. The payback period for municipal capital investments are significantly more than twice the time frame for build-out. So scenario one, full build-out would occur at year 16, and the break-even year is year 44. For scenario two, full build-out would occur at year 50, and the break-even year would be year 137. And another point is that operating revenues are inadequate to cover both operating and capital costs. Infrastructure improvements needed to support growth in the study area are significant. So we're looking at, based on scenario 1, around 86 million, scenario 2, 192 million. Also, as Monica mentioned, transportation issues, concerns exist related to safety along the Highway 30 corridor. We also conducted a focus group with stakeholders in this area. There are a lot of concerns regarding getting on and off Highway 30, and as this area develops, there's concerns that that could be exacerbated. There's also a lot of contiguous forested areas, steeply sloping areas, also a lot of agricultural lands in this area, so impacts to contiguous forested areas and agricultural resources should be avoided and at a minimum mitigated. The capital costs associated with scenario 2 are over double that of scenario 1. And then finally, the last finding is, compared with scenario 1, scenario 2 would take over 3 times as long to pay off the municipal share of capital costs. So unless there are any questions on the study, I'm going to turn it over to Seth.
Go ahead, Pat.
I guess I'm confused. So we're talking about land development dwellings. So was this driven by just miscellaneous requests to develop housing developments there?
Yeah, go back to that, the map,
But
just the color, not that one, but the colored one.
typically, when a developer buys land, develops the lots, puts in the streets, and if he wants the city to own it, it's built to city specs, puts in the infrastructure, and then as I buy a lot, I'm paying my share. So I guess are we upside down in all of these land deals that we do with developers? I guess I don't understand. To me, the math isn't adding up, because don't we expect the developer to put in the streets, and I'm going to assume we have plenty of sanitary sewer capacity. We're not talking about adding capacity.
And that's one of the,
And that's one of the
It
huge
would
issues
require
with
adding
topography out
capacity.
here.
Okay.
So it's not as easy as just
Right,
extending
but-
what we
but
have,
is there
so.
cost to put in the lift station? I mean,
That's what,
none of this adds up to me, I guess, and so it's like going to a movie and I'm in suspended disbelief, but I'm waiting for
And what we would say is, and even with the roadways is another good example. So within a subdivision, absolutely, those roadways are the responsibility of the developer. In this case, there's nothing connecting them with the rest of our, so it's all of the connections.
Okay, all right.
and I think the sewer too, the slope is the wrong way.
Yep.
So we would have tremendous amount of dollars to get it going the right way. And we already have a lift station issue out here where they begged us to take it over. So, part of this is, because MPO does so much with transportation, we decided we're going to use some of our dollars in concert with Ely and with Lynn County to say, look, we're being asked, how we all get eaten away, nickel and dime on, hey, I want this done, and pretty soon, well, there's so many people out here, we've got to improve, and she's not showing all the details, but there's ways to get back into town, and there's a possible, now we need a bridge, and, all of this stuff, and so it ends up that in order to really, if it grows at a certain, we've got these 2 different paces.
Mm-hmm.
So you're right, but we were looking at the other kinds of bigger infrastructure that is needed, and that could really sneak up on us.
And if I could just add to that, in the fiscal impact analysis, they also look at ongoing maintenance, which can be costly over. And that was, besides the capital cost, maintenance cost was pretty high as well.
And I also took it, because we looked at this several times, executive and then main, the big board, but I also think that this isn't as dense as many of our neighborhoods. So just the idea of how you take the garbage away and how you do all the stuff, to Ann's point, it just costs more. And also it's sort of seen as, to me, it was seen as more residential. So we can't tax as high because the plans they're not as dense, they don't have commercial or industrial, and there's going to be a lot of infrastructure that sneaks up on us. I thought it was a really good thing to look at because there is a real interest because it's Highway 30, so you can quickly get somewhere that you want. But if we go ahead without a whole lot of planning, we could end up footing the bill for some pretty big stuff. Is that the point here?
That's what this study, that's basically the results of the study.
But don't we control that? I mean, so if a developer wants to
Somehow.
develop the yellow area, say, well, go at it, but here's, you're gonna need an exchange on, I mean,
Think of how we
we're
get
still in
tired.
control. I'm just, that's why,
Well, we'll be in control if we put some parameters on this. If we are tighter about it, because pretty soon, that's a little bit hard to get to. You know, we gotta go through that one lane antique bridge or tunnel to get there from one of the directions. I mean, there's just some crazy things that, and that's where our bridge deal that we've talked about for years. And it's a little hard to get to this. So then now you gotta get your police there, you gotta get your fire there, you gotta get your garbage trucks there. You got sewer going the wrong way. So you have lift stations, but then they're gonna say, we need you guys to take them over because we have problems.
that isn't the answer, like an impact fee. I mean, that plays off that,
Well, I think
We
this
talked
is.
about it 10 years ago, and
I mean, you're making good points.
I
That's
guess-
what we would have
Right.
to do.
Yeah.
Like
But I
what
think
we're
it's-
I
saying
don't
is,
see the problem. I just, as long as.
the problem is get to yes and everything. If you want to
Exactly.
live
No, I
here, it
understand.
costs you a lot more, but how do we do that
And,
legally?
and that's exactly why it's a study and not a plan, because we're neither promoting development or saying no to development. What we're saying is, here are the costs of
Yeah.
development. How does this happen? When does it make sense to happen?
Well, and I think it also, to me, somebody that lives pretty much inner city in our community, in what I call our what do we call it, something too, where we are now just reinvesting in streets and roads and stuff, but it's easy to come get my trash because I live on kind of a grid system. You can go either way, there's all kinds of choices. So I live in the middle of our city, but I'm gonna pay the same taxes as those guys out there will. And, I don't know how we do this legally or whatever, but I think our stuff flows the right way. And we have a little more density and whatever. I mean, it's okay, it's just that as we go out further, how do we, it's gonna cost us more. And so do we all pay that equally? I think what they're just showing is there's a lot of costs.
Well, and I think the analysis is good because we're getting ahead of it instead of behind it.
Yes.
So it allows us to grow thoughtfully, because I'm with Pat, I mean, we have all of these issues, so I think the analysis is great, but how do we keep moving forward, I think is what I'm always looking at, and that's what I think I'm hearing from Pat is.
Yeah, because aren't we
how do
going
we
to
get
continue to get requests from developers saying, I want
Absolutely.
to develop this area,
So this might be
and then we piecemeal it, and then.
Yeah.
So this might be a good time for
Okay.
me to say again, we've changed the background of the slides now, City of Cedar Rapids. So really what I'm going to talk about a little bit is how this kind of fits in within the context of the city's comprehensive plan. As you know, we adopted Vision CR in January, coming up on the 1-year anniversary. The city's plan classifies land use throughout the city using land use typology areas. It includes a variety of what we call urban LUDAs, which kind of contemplate a mix of use of developments across the spectrum of development within that LUDA and receive full urban services. And there are other ones, ag preserve and rural, that do not contemplate the future extension of city services, or maybe not quite to the same level. They're basically areas where we're saying, we may not be, extending sewer and water. This is lower scale, like ag preserve development. Along the Highway 30 corridor, the city's future land use map calls for limited development. Mixture of ag preserve, low density, and larger lot development. And there's an environmental conservation overlay, which part of the zoning code update will be looking into a little bit more what that means. But what the city's comprehensive plan did was identify that there are a lot of natural resources in these areas. And most of the area covered by the Highway 30 study is not planned for the extension of city services. So part of I think part of, from the city's perspective, why we requested this study was to get an idea of the cost of development in the area, because as council, you guys see individual developments, and one of the concerns we had was, the transportation one is a good one, is that what's the tipping point in which there really needs to be significant city or regional dollars spent on an intersection improvement, and how do we kind of plan for that long term so that, it's equitable, so that we're not, diverting money that could be used for, repaving streets into creating an interchange, that sort of thing.
The dollars that Ann showed us, is assuming full city services?
I believe
Yes.
so, yeah.
In
Okay.
scenario 2
So-
and scenario 1.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, obviously, the city has a focus on, we want to encourage infill development, but we realize there will be peripheral growth around the city as well. And there's, as you said, we're working on the Highway 100 plan as well. When we did the Envision CR plan, we assumed that there were areas that were a lot easier for us to serve, north side of town along Highway 100, that are kind of future residential growth areas that, because of topography, there aren't quite the same issues. And other areas which were maybe a little bit more difficult. And this is just a screenshot of the city's future land use map. The area over here is listed as agriculture preserve. Up here, there's a mixture of low intensity and especially back here, which there's a lot of existing development and large lots. So that's basically the city's current future land use policy. And if you can see the red line or the kind of dotted line, that shows the current city boundaries. So, from your perspective, what you'll see is when people propose projects, is annexation requests, rezoning requests, and really, our goal for this is for this to be a tool, for a resource for council when you see decisions come through that you guys have to make when there are requests from developers or from individuals wanting to come into the city or wanting to do certain types of development. Our recommendation is that the City Council accept the findings of the Highway 30 study. We'll bring a resolution to the City Council. It kind of confirms the Envision CR future land use plan, which was one of the things I think we wanted to kind of test with this study was, are there higher cost of development there? Demonstrates that there are costs that would need to be captured through development along the corridor. Identifies challenges to future growth, like future intersection improvements, what some of those more regional infrastructure investments might be. As you noted, typically when you build out a subdivision, you have to provide all the infrastructure for that subdivision. If there's a larger area where massive downstream upgrades would need to be made, being aware of those.
If Walmart went into Walmart, we would have had a traffic study. And it would have
Yeah,
done that. So
exactly.
I still don't see the problem here. We can.
Well, send him the full study so he can read
Yeah.
and see
Yeah.
what some of the major things are that would be outside of each developer.
So we're not recommending a ban or moratorium on development along the corridor. It's a tool for decision making, but it's something that we want to staff will be contextualizing as development comes through. And this is the city's land use plan at this time, and with Envision CR, this is something we'll continually evaluate into the future. But I think something that staff wants to be able to respond to council with when there's any development request, especially an annexation request or something that changes the city's borders, is, are we able to service this now? Is this creating a looming issue? And to us, that's what we want to be able to bring forward to you.
Well, thanks for doing the looking out ahead of us kind of work. And
Is the full analysis available?
Yeah.
Or the plan?
Yeah.
Study.
It's an analysis.
Dad, don't be calling it a plan. Oh my God.
I'd like to see it.
Yeah.
I think this is fascinating.
Yeah.
So let's, get these, if you'll forward that
Sure.
whole thing.
Yeah.
I would also say, to me, when we're looking at this, I think this is why, communities like when Portland did their controversial, but it helped them a lot, circle around the community, and they're not going to grow outside of that. In a way, we did our own test with that after the flood, where we forced that development to the center where we knew we needed infill and where we could infrastructure it easily, efficiently. I mean, you know, maybe it's not a ban or a moratorium, we already know what, there's some liability with those kinds of things, but I also think this also does beg the question, do we say, look, here are areas that are gonna be harder than heck for us to help you out in, and this is where we want our city to be, and then, you know, people are gonna all scream and everything, but what it does is it immediately makes everything inside that more valuable, and, you know, so, I mean, just stuff to think about. What you're asking us for today, though, is just to accept that this was done and that we're gonna enter it into the body of information that we have. Not a plan, but just an analysis of what might happen.
Sure.
Okay. All right, thanks, Pat. Motion by Shea, second by Wynack. All in favor of just accepting this plan into our body of information, say aye. All opposed, motion carries. Okay, great.
Yeah.
It is